Hello and welcome to week 11 of Culinary Arts 1 in Continuing Education of George Brown College. Today we're going to make a lovely stuffed pork steak with some applesauce for it. And we're going to also make raisin and onion bread pudding. It may sound a bit weird, but it tastes very nice. Now, you'll see that what we have to do first is make the filling for the pork. So I have my ingredients here. I have some onion here. And again, try and cut this up as fine as you can. All right, remember, keep the root on at the back of the onion so it stays in one piece. Just like that. Piece of celery, and again, cut your celery down into pieces like that so that they're easier to manipulate. Just press down on them so now they're flat. There you go. Now, these are sun-dried apples. You'll see that you can get them at places like the Bulk Barn or places like that. But if you can't find them, use just regular apples, all right? Or whatever other nice pear you can use in this. You can put cranberries in here. Whatever you think will taste good, put it in, okay? Now, with this apple, it is a bit on the tough side. Taste it. You'll see that it is very concentrated flavor of apple. A little goes a long way. Okay, so we have that. I have a bit of basil and oregano here. Excuse me, basil and parsley here. And here I've got some crumbled Stilton. Now, Stilton is a nice, strong English-style blue vein cheese. You'll see that, though, we're using it as a seasoning. It's not like, I know some people wrinkle their nose at some of the stronger cheeses, but this one here, you'll see, will give it a very nice, mild taste. It's more of a seasoning than anything. I've got a bit of white wine. Now, this isn't in the recipe, but when I'm going to make the savory puddings for you, I had a few pieces of bread left, so I'm going to put that in the filling. All right, and what I'm going to do here is just cut it down just like that. Now, this you don't have to cook in the filling. I'll show you what I mean in a second. And again, if you don't want to do this part, by all means, don't do it. It's just I had 2 pieces of bread left, and I just want to use it. So I'm just going to put it in this bowl here. Okay, so this is the filling for our pork. We got to do that first and let it cool down a bit. Just going to use my little portable stove. All right, and I got a bit of olive oil in there. And I'm just going to put a couple of drops of diced onion in there just to see if it's hot enough. And it seems like it is. So I'm going to cook off the onion and the celery first. Yeah, you should always hear that nice sizzle. Okay, now we don't have to brown this, we just have to sweat it. Remember, that's cooking without color. Okay, and you'll see that you achieve that when you have a bit of transparency in the onions that you're doing. Let me just move that a bit closer. There you go. Now I'm holding back on the apples a bit simply because there's so much sugar in there, it'll tend to stick and burn on you. All right, so I'm starting to get just a hint of browning. Now I can put in my apples and some of my basil and parsley, a bit of salt and pepper. Now we're just going to cook that for another minute. Now with the Stilton, I'm not going to put it in while uh, it's on the flame, simply because the butter fat will come out of the Stilton and it tends to scorch and burn. I'm going to put it on. All we want to do is melt the Stilton. So I'm going to put it on after we turn it off here. Okay, so that's fine like that. The wine, you just need a bit. Okay, and if you don't want to put the wine, that's fine also. You do not need the chicken stock for this. The idea is that we want to keep this as, we want to keep it moist, but we don't want to have it really wet, because what will happen inside of the pork or any other meat that you use this for, it tends to steam. And when that happens is it turns the meat tougher. So we just want just enough. Now my flame is off there. And what I'm going to do is put in my crumbled Stilton. And if you don't want to use Stilton, fine. All right. And all we're going to do here, the residual heat, is going to melt it. And you'll see that becomes almost creamy in a sense. We don't need this for now. Okay, there's our bread. And again, that's optional. Put that all in there. And just mix it around. Again, the bread doesn't need any cooking at all. Now, what we want to do is have this stay together. You don't need an egg for this. All right, and this is how you tell if you need a bit more moisture or not. Like, this looks moist enough here. What you do is bang it or push it against the side like that, and then jiggle it. You see how it's all staying together? That's fine like that. Now, with this here, we're just going to let it cool down a bit. Now, we're going to make the savory onion and raisin pudding for the pork steak. You'll see that the word savory itself, what that means is simply that it's a non-dessert pudding, if you will. Think of a savory pie. A savory pie would be something like a chicken pot pie, where a pie, like an apple pie, that's a dessert pie. All right? Now, very simple ingredients. I just slowly cooked off some onions, garlic, and rosemary in a bit of butter. And my raisins here, I'm letting them soak because they were a bit too dry. My breadcrumbs here, you can use any bread for this. If you use stuff like 7-grain bread and stuff like that, it's actually quite nicer. Okay, this is just some egg bread here. And I've got some egg here. And just off camera, I'm just heating up some milk. And you see that puff of steam? That tells you it's scalded. That's what you want. I also have a bit of nutmeg in there. Now, I'm going to cook these in these little ramekins, we call them. Okay? Now, you'll see that I did butter them. Sorry, I oiled them a bit. I just took some oil with paper towel and just rubbed them around there. Now, what I want to do is mix all this together. Now, with the egg, with the onion and the garlic, I'm going to put it in there. I have already put a bit of salt and pepper in there. With the raisins, what I'm going to do, because I want them evenly distributed, what I'm going to do here is just put a few in each container so everybody gets the same amount, and then I'll put some more in afterwards. Okay, just like that. Now my milk is scalded. and we'll pour it in here. Now, rule of thumb, I have 3/4 of a liter, that's 750 milliliters. For every half liter that you use, you're using 4 eggs. So in here, I've got 6 eggs, all right? And you'll see that that's a good combination for a custard, if you will. So when you do pour the milk in, pour it in slowly, or you're going to cook the egg. All right, this is called tempering the egg. Okay, it eases the heat into the egg, just slowly. It's like going to a swimming pool or something, or to a lake and dipping your toe in to see how cold it is. You're sort of tempering your body. And this is the same idea here. Okay, so there you go. Now, the reason I heated it up is when I put it in there, you'll see that we're going to bake it. And if you just have cold milk in there, you'll see it takes too long to heat up in the oven. If you heat it up already, just like when you folks did the quiche, it works better. Okay, now I'm just going to cover my breadcrumbs in this. And as I mentioned before, I pre-baked the bread because it was a bit too fresh. What I did was toast it a bit, cut it up, put it on a tray, and toast it a bit to dry it out. So what it does is suck in the custard. So what I'm going to do now is just take some and plop it in. All right, I'm using a whole spoon here, so I also get the custard. And you'll see that when they're baked after, they're going to look like, well, almost like a muffin. You'll see when they're done. Again, this is a nice little way of, let's say, adding a starch to a meal without using rice and potato or noodles all the time. This would be considered your starch, and it is quite flavorful. Okay, so I filled them up almost to the top. I'm just going to put some more raisins in there. And don't be shy about putting any other dried fruit, if you will, in there. Dried apricots work very well in here. Again, cranberries. If you like to put some nuts in there, by all means, you're limited by your imagination. Okay, and this was about 1/2 cup of raisins. All right, now we'll just overfill them a bit. All right, and I have 8 containers, so 1 slice per container of bread, and it tends to work out. I got a touch of custard left, but that's okay. Let me just use up as much as I can. All right, now, if you've ever made creme caramel or any other dessert that has a custard in it, you'll see that the best thing to do is cook them, excuse me, edit please. Uh, you'll see that anytime you make creme caramel or creme brulee, anything that has a custard like we do here, it's good to cook it in a water bath. And what I mean by that is put some water in there about halfway up. And what that does is create steam in the oven so it stays nice and moist. And you'll see that they all cook at a more even pace, if you will. All right, now I know these are cooked when afterwards, when I tap them on the top, they'll feel hollow. Like right now they feel spongy. But afterwards you'll almost feel and hear a hollowness to it. That means they're cooked. All right? Now, I just heated up some water. You heat it up on the kettle at home. You'll see if you just use water from the tap, it's not hot enough. You want it to start to create steam right away. Okay, and about halfway up your container. Now, this goes in the oven at 350 for about 30 minutes to 40 minutes. We'll check on them afterwards. I have the pork steaks that we're going to use for our stuffed pork steak. You need a bit of disposable salt and pepper, like always, all right, when you're dealing with meat. Now, the recipe wants you to stuff them and then tie them up. What it actually wants you to do is cut these pork steaks along there and open them up like a butterfly, let's say. Put the stuffing in, close them up, and tie them up. I'm going to show you a nicer way of doing that. All right. First of all, these are loin steaks. These are from the back of the animal. You see that they're about 1.5 inches thick. Lovely steaks. You'll see that you can use chicken breasts for this. I've stuffed whatever you can possibly stuff with this if you don't want to use pork. But with these here, if you go to the butcher and say, I want center cut loin steaks, you'll see that they cost you about 10 to 12 bucks a piece. But what you can do is if you look at your local supermarkets, one of them always has what they call the half loin on sale, because a whole loin, you'll probably out of camera range, so I'll stay like that. This is a half loin. So imagine that a full loin is that much longer, all right? Now, they sell them in half because people will buy them in half. And you'll see that, I just got my towels here. You'll see that that's actually the size of it, about like this. Now, this part here of the pork steak, all right, all this here, this is what we call the eye, all right? And you see how nice and well-developed that eye is. When you're looking for these pork steaks, and that, or sorry, these pork loins, boneless pork loins, you'll see that you can easily cut 10 to 12 1.5 inch thick steaks out of there. Instead of paying $10 per piece, this whole piece here costs you about $18 to $20. So, you know, you can pay whatever, $1.50 a piece or $10.50 a piece. You can just cut your own, and it's not that hard. You just go like this. Now, what you have to do, though, is just a simple thing. You'll see, like I said, is the loin is double that size, and they cut them in half. Now, what you do is you have to look for the one that has a nice eye on both sides, and that would be right there. So, nice eye there, nice eye there. That's the one you want. That's from the front of the animal. You'll see the back part of the animal, nice eye there, and then it sort of goes like that, irregular, because it goes into the hip of the animal, so you don't get a nice stuffing meat, let's say. So you want the ones that have a good eye there and a good eye there. What you can also do with these is stick your knife in one way, all right? See if I can do it with the towels. And just twirl it around like that. Go in the other way. So what you made is a nice cavity in there, and stuff it from both ends with whatever nice stuffing you have. You'll see in lesson number 12, I'm going to show you how to tie it up with butcher twine, the lamb, but you can do the same with the pork, and you have a whole roast pork loin, and when you slice it, you have the stuffing in the middle. All right, so with these here, as I said, I'm not going to cut them like the book says because I don't want to keep the string on there. I want to make it look natural. So what you do is take your boning knife, and what I'm going to do is go in the center part right there, the thickest part, and I'm going to put my knife in like this and just saw like that, and I'm going to create a cavity so this way I don't need the string. Okay, you can actually feel where it is. And just saw, don't just push. Saw like you're slicing a loaf of bread. All right, and when you do come back out, see, I can fit my finger in there. Make it so that you can fit 2 fingers because we want to stuff that. So there's one. All right, just like that. Make sure that your knife stays parallel to the board. Like, don't make it go up, don't make it go down. And what I'm doing as I'm putting them back on the plate is making sure that the cut opening is always facing the same way, so I'm not looking everywhere for it. Okay. And then This one here, I'm going to purposely poke a hole in it. This is why it's nice if you have a few toothpicks handy there. I'll show you after. All right, just like that. Now, I'm purposely going to just tear into it like that. No big thing. We're going to use the toothpicks, but we'll use those afterwards. Okay, not right now, after it's stuffed. So, we have that. This gets a bit messy. All right, if you have a little spoon, that's fine. You'll see that if you have a lot, if you put it in a piping bag, this stuff will just glide through a piping bag. But with this one here, this is the one that I cut a bit. I'm just going to use my hands, and it can get a bit messy. Now, you may have more stuffing than you need. You'll see, especially because we put the bread, don't try and force it all in, because what happens when it cooks is the meat shrinks, but this filling expands and it can tear your meat. So just enough so it's firm. And see, this is just at room temperature now. All right, you don't want to put hot things into cool meat unless you're going to cook it right away. Because this here, I can do this now, keep it in the fridge, and not cook it till tonight. All right, if this was chicken breast, no. Chicken breast, you got to cook right away when you stuff it. Other meat, you don't have to. Okay, and we'll just put that in there. Okay, and try and keep the outside fairly clean. Okay, so that's one done. Now this, again, this is the one that, remember, I intentionally put a hole into it. And what I'm going to do now, there's my hole here, is just sort of stitch it on the side like that. Okay? Don't like stick the toothpicks in on an up angle like that where you can't lie the meat flat after. But that's how you take care of a tear. But do that after you stuff it. Okay? These three, I didn't tear it, so I'm okay. And again, this way here, the steak looks natural because we're not tying it up per se. Right, that's just a nice way of doing it. And again, make sure you're fairly clean on the outside. I will show you how to tie this up if you do it that butterfly cut. Let me just finish stuffing. Now, again, I have more stuffing than I need. You can put in a baggie and freeze it till next time. All right. Or you can use it as part of the dish, and I'll show you that after. Okay, and the other thing is too, is give it a little pat like that. Make sure it's flat again. All right, because when you stuff them, you tend to get a bulge right in the middle, and you don't want that bulge to stay there, or else it doesn't fry nicely because it doesn't sit down properly in the pan. Now I got a piece of string here. Now if you did want to tie it up, what you would do is start at the end there and just snug it up like you're tying a shoelace, and then another knot on top, and then just pull until it's snug. Now this is what you do. Your hand, I'm right-handed, so my left hand is like this. You go over the thumb to the pinky, and then you twist your hand, so what you create is a little loop. And you just go in like that. All right, and then go around the edge, go around the other side, and you tie it off like that. All right, but that's if you, again, open it up. I don't particularly like that because it doesn't make it look natural. All right, so again, we don't need the string here because it looks natural. The stuffing is staying in. So now, our disposable salt and pepper, just season them a bit. Turn them over. All right, now go wash everything that touched that pork, okay? You don't need the cutting board for now. Now we're ready to fry the pork steak. I've got a bit of olive oil in the pan. Um, the recipe mentions to rub it onto the pork. You'll see what happens there is you don't get enough oil into the pan and you tend to scorch the meat. I find, again, minimalistic on the oil, just enough to nicely cover the bottom. Again, let's heat that up. And again, there's always something lying around. I got a piece of celery here. When that's starting to sizzle, we'll start frying the pork chops. Now, you can fry them completely on the stove, but you're better off just browning them nicely and putting them in the oven. And the reason is that on the stove, by the time the interior cooks, the outside tends to be very dry. All right, because of the way the heat application, it's only from one side. But if you just brown them nicely and put them in the oven, let them roast for about 20 minutes, you'll see that you'll have beautiful, moist pork steaks. All right, I'm just moving it around a bit, distribute the heat. Okay, so you see my little piece of celery is starting to fry. I just want the oil just a touch hotter. Okay, and I got a wisp of smoke. That's fine. Now you should hear a nice sizzle. Hear that? That's what you want. Be patient. When the sizzle goes up in volume, let's say, that's the time where you know you're going to have a nice little crust. I'm just pushing them down a bit. Okay, and again, one of the hardest things to do in cooking is patience. Just leave them alone. You'll see that if I turn them over too quickly, it'll drop the temperature of the oil too much. And what will happen is that they start to boil because there's not enough heat to fry. It draws the juices out and they get tough. And this is a nice tender piece of meat. So let's see if they're sticking, and they're not sticking. All right, that's just by being patient. All right, and if you want to check to see how they are, see how they're getting that nice crust. I just got another minute or so, and we're good on that side. And when it comes to the fat along the side of these, let me just show you what I mean. Right there, I know that some people are very fat conscious, and you should be, but leave the fat on till after they're done. If you trim it off before you start to cook, you'll see what will happen is the meat becomes very dry because the fat does have a job to do in these. It's to melt off, leaving behind the flavors, but also keeping the meat moist. All right, so these should be okay now. And there you go. See that nice crust. Okay, and there's this one here that has my little toothpicks in it. Remember to remove the toothpicks before you serve this. Okay, so what I'm going to do is draw off some of that oil after because I don't need it anymore. But I'm going to rub a bit of butter on top of these. And then halfway through the cooking, let's say about the 10-minute mark, I'm going to take them out and baste them a bit. And let's see how we are there. You see how we got the crust there, so we're fine now. So I just want to draw off some of the oil. And again, don't pour it down the sink. I'm going to pour it in here till it's cool enough and then put it in my organic container. All right, there you go. And you see that that's nice flavor down at the bottom of the pan. I want to take advantage of it after it comes out of the oven. Rub a bit of butter on it. And again, this is just for savoriness. You don't have to do this. All right, now this goes into the oven at 400 degrees Fahrenheit. It roughly takes 20 minutes. We'll check it afterwards. Uh, but after 10 minutes, I'm going to take it out just to baste it a bit. All right. Now, this is the applesauce ingredients. You'll see that I've already peeled the apples. Just cord them and cut them like that. And I've got these beautiful, these are Cortland apples. They break down fast, but yet they still hold it a bit. I'm going to do the applesauce two ways. I'm going to do the one that it says in the book, but I'm also going to show you, especially I want to take advantage of that beautiful skin. Now, here I got a pot with just, I've got a bit more apples, so I've got about 2 ounces of water in there. That's not too much. And I'm going to put my apples in there. Now, these apples here that I'm putting into the pot, I've put a bit of lemon juice in the water so that they don't oxidize. All right, because if you just leave them hanging around, you'll see that they will turn brown on you. All right, just a pinch of nutmeg and a pinch of cinnamon, not too much. Now, with sugar, do you add sugar or not? Taste the apple first. These apples are a bit tart, so I will add just a touch of sugar. But anytime something says add sugar, taste it first, because sometimes there's already enough sweetness naturally. Now I have ginger here, and what I did with this, with the back of the knife, I just pulled it like that, and then I used my microplaner and grated it. So put that in. I just need a bit of lemon juice, but I'll wait for that. Now, this here, it's very simple. I got a lid for it. And what we're going to do here is just put it on my little burner on low heat. All right, not high heat. And every once in a while, just stir it around with my spoon. And the idea here is that we mush it up, and that's your applesauce. Okay, it's not that hard to do. Okay, I'm just going to put that to the side here. And again, on low heat. Now, with these two apples here, I'm just going to show you another applesauce. In fact, it's like an apple compote, if you will. I don't want to peel these because I love that color. So what we're going to do here is like this. 1, 2, 3. Turn it around the other side. 1, 2, 3. And this side here. 1, 2, 3. And there, we've cored the apple. Okay, now what I want to do with these is I want to dice them. All right? And again, we'll see after when I'm finished what we're going to do with these. We'll do applesauce two ways. I always show the students this way also because the one that's on the stove right now, the applesauce that's in the recipe, is almost like something that you can buy in a jar or a can, whatever. So I just want to show you what else you can do with these, especially if you have beautiful apples like this. Okay? All right, and what I'm going to do is just put them in a bowl and put some of the lemon juice in there. Now, you can use whatever kind of apples you like. I just find that Cortland apples and Spy apples really get the heat nice. All right, like if you use a Macintosh apple or a Red Delicious, you'll see that they turn to fall apart too much. But then again, if that's your goal of making a traditional applesauce, that's fine. But these ones here, you'll see that because the skin's on them, they tend to keep their shapes. All right. So I need to wait until the pork is out of the oven before I do anything with these. Again, we'll see in a sec. Get all that lemon in there. Mix it up. All right, now to keep these nice and bright, I've got the lemon. I don't want to put them in water because they'll get too wet for this application. So I'm just going to get a damp towel and put it over. Okay, just a damp towel. And that should keep them from oxidizing. Now we'll just check our traditional ones, see how they're doing. Okay, they're just starting to steam. They do smell quite nice. The ginger and the cinnamon just come up at you right away. All right, they're still kind of firm, but the idea with the lid on it is it steams. All right, you don't want to put too much water in, simply because it'll get too moist. All right, so it's been about 10 minutes for the pork steaks. Let's take a peek at them. And you see here how, you see that there, that's some of the filling or the stuffing that came out of the meat, because as I told you, the meat shrinks a bit. Now what I'm going to do is just tip it a bit and just baste it a bit. All right. And these are roasting nicely. These take about another 10 minutes. I'll show you how to tell. So take a look at our apples here. All right, and they're starting to break down. Okay, and just push down with your spoon. Right, as I said, these Cortlands hold their shape well, so these take a bit longer to do. What you can do, if they are, if you feel they're cooked, but they haven't broken down, simply put them in a food processor or some other device. You'll see that it works fine. Immersion blender or a blender. You'll see that also put them in a bowl and just do them by hand with a potato masher. But those will be fun. We have time. We're waiting for our proteins and that to come out of the oven. Now, our savory onion, I just took them out of the oven for a sec. And what I'm doing is tapping them. And they're almost ready. They almost feel hollow, but there's still a bit of moisture in there that has to congeal a bit. All right, so these are going back into the oven. I'm just checking the applesauce again. I have a metal spoon here. See, they're starting to break up now. Right, you see how they create. I just had an ounce or two of liquid in there, but now I've got about a quarter cup. That's from the apples themselves. They release their moisture. So now what we're doing is just waiting for that to be ready, the steaks and the puddings to be ready, and then we can do our final lesson here. These are getting nice and soft now. Right, and I'm just going to tip it a bit, just to break them up a bit, just like that. Okay. One thing you got to be concerned about is if you go at high heat and you evaporate that nice juice, what may happen is that the sugars start to burn, and what you're left with is a burnt pot and a burnt applesauce. So control your heat. Right, and we'll just put that back. Here we are back to the applesauce. And what you can do here is if you have a little immersion blender, and these are quite common now, they're inexpensive, and they work very well. Just going to puree this a bit more, because my liquid is starting to dry out, so I don't want to burn it. All right, and I don't want a very, very wet applesauce. I want it, actually that's nice like that. All right, so that's it. That's all it takes for the applesauce. I'm just going to put it in this bowl here. Keep it warm. And you see that it is still moist. The reason I went to the immersion blender is I don't want it drier than that. And I don't want it wetter than that. And you see that the pan itself hasn't been scorched. So we're good there. So I'll just keep that off to the side. Now, our pork steaks are lovely. Now, uh, with pork steaks, this is a bit of a controversy. Some people still say you have to petrify the pork. I remember when my mom cooked pork chops and that, they were always crunchy because you have to be, or people are concerned about trichinosis. That's one of the parasites with pork. But there hasn't been a case for so many years because we treat the pork differently now. Before, we used to just give them literally garbage, but now the regulations and rules are different. So it's very hard to find a pork in North America that has trichinosis associated to it. You'll see if you go in order this in a restaurant, more than likely it's served medium rare. All right. Now with this here, I'm just going to take them out and I'll show you how to tell that they're done. All right, now this stuff here, I'm just going to leave there for a sec. I'll show you why. All right, now with these pork here, let's say this one here, see that's the presentation side. So turn it over and about an inch in, just cut in halfway down and take a peek. I don't see any red or pink, so that's fine like that. So I'll just put those to the side. Now, I'm just going to get back my burner here. Now, this is what I want to do with this lovely mixture down there. I hate throwing away good flavor. So this is what I'm going to do. I've got a bit of butter left in there. I'm just going to put just a touch more and let it melt. Now, be careful that you don't burn this nice stuff at the bottom. Okay, there's a little burnt piece I can take out, though. Okay. All right, this is taking advantage of all these nice flavors. Now, what I'm going to do here is those apples that I cut up. All right, what this is going to do is the juices are going to come out of these apples and they're going to pick up all that nice flavor. You see how I'm cleaning the frying pan? That's what I want to do. And I do have some stuffing left. So let's put that in there. All right, again, it's not in the book, but you'll see it's a way of using up extra ingredients. And this looks, in my opinion, nicer than just a pureed apple. I'm just going to taste it for salt and pepper. It just needs a touch of pepper. Salt, we're okay. All right, the apple's nice and crispy. And that's what you want. You just want to blend everything together. The apples do not have to be cooked down into a puree. You see how we clean the bottom of the pan with all that nice flavor? But that's it. All right, I'm just going to put that to the side. Put the dressing in a bowl. All right, so the last thing we have to do is just take the bread pudding out. All right, and there you go. And they feel hollow. So I'll just take one out for now. All right, so these are the savory bread puddings, all done. I'll just take one out for now. Just put these over to the side. Okay, now with these here, they slide out quite easily. Don't put them like that on a plate. They don't look as nice as if you just slide them out like that. I'm just going to put a bit of the chunky applesauce on the bottom. Take a nice pork steak. Now with these, you can just slice them on the bias like that. See how nice they are? And that's your stuffing there. And just arrange them like that. All right, or just slice them up a bit more and fan them out a bit. By the way, this is fantastic on the barbecue. Just that's when you do oil the pork steaks on their own. All right, so just like that. And just a bit of the traditional applesauce at the front. And there's your stuffed pork steaks with the Stilton stuffing, the traditional applesauce, the chunky applesauce, and your savory bread pudding there. Thank you. This has been Culinary Arts 1, Week 11. My name is Chef Frank Tony Guzzo, and we'll see you again for Week 12.